Hello everyone, I'm Jordan Lee, here today to talk about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This takeover is one of the worst attacks on European soil since World War II. Here we're going to ask, why does Putin want the land? And is he trying to rebuild a USSR? And later, my exclusive one-on-one with Kevin Baeza from the Kevventure.
Here are the top 5 places you should visit in Ukraine.
To understand the context of the war, we have to look back and compare the two nations. Ukrainians have been around for a long time before their nation was founded in the wake of the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union. Russia and Ukraine have been together, connected since the days of the Kievan Rus eras, and share similar group of Slavic languages and follow a very similar Orthodox Church group. Eastern Ukrainians also have great influence of Russian culture. When Ukraine gained its own independence in 1991, many Russians viewed this divorce as a fall to Russia standing as a world power. Since then, East Ukrainians favored Russians to pursue a closer relationship by securing a strong ally, while the West wanted EU help by boosting the economy, and joining NATO meant Russian aid independence. Also, Ukraine and Georgia, both nations, also former USSR states, have been thinking about joining NATO for a long time, and thus were bullied by Putin in this act of defiance by annexing them. 2013 brought out a nationwide protest on the pro-Russian government support, which led to Putin annexing Crimea and pro-Russian rebels. In 2022, Putin recognized the areas as independent and launched his full-scale invasion of Ukraine days later. The president claims he is doing this to exterminate neo-Nazis and free any living Russians in Ukraine. In reality, experts think he doesn't want Ukraine to have Western partnerships with NATO. Since then, Russian soldiers have flattened buildings in Ukraine and have murdered thousands of lives in this lightning invasion. 8 million refugees have fled Ukraine to neighboring nations and to other continents to be safe. Men who were over the age of 18 had to stay behind and defend their homeland, despite leaving behind their loved ones and families. President Zelenskyy of Ukraine was asked by other nations to evacuate the nation, but chose to stay and fight till the very end, thus giving him the title of 2022's Time Person of the Year. The refugees were welcomed by the other nations with open arms in this long walk to freedom. One man played the piano for those arriving in Poland to show his support in this tragedy. In 1 year, Ukraine has gained back stolen territories, making Putin's rapid invasion stalled from being fast to ongoing slowness. Things on the Russian side aren't too good either way. Putin recently has been charged with war crimes and illegal child abductions during the war by the International Court. His alliance with Belarus and its leader, Alexander Lukashenko, on placing tanks and military personnel has been met with widespread condemnation for the two leaders in this continuing military buildup of this ongoing war. Russia, too, faced sanctions from international businesses shutting down in their nation, and the cost for needs has been going up ever since. This also caused citizens in Russia to be suspended from traveling to any place around the globe. A month before his death, Mikhail Gorbachev, the final USSR leader, also admitted he was upset about the invasion, traumatized, and felt his life's work was destroyed. This shows the world that even the citizens also condemn this act, despite the government continuing to spread this propaganda in the streets and museums. In spite of heavy fighting with ongoing bombings and gunfires, some troops have reunited with their families, while the ones who perished will never be forgotten. I'm now joined by Kevin Baeza from the Kevventure series from YouTube, which are very popular, so you should go check it out. In your travels to Ukraine, what affected you the most while being around that area?
Well, I remember one day I had some spare time and I went to an abandoned amusement park, because as a kid I would always wanted to be in go to an abandoned amusement park and have the park to myself. I got on a few of the rides and then I ran into these random kids that were there. There were, I think, 14. and they were pretty interesting to talk to. They were orphans, actually, and while I was talking to them, bombs were blowing up in the background.
Yeah, there's bombs going off in the back right now.
And they weren't even phased. Like, a bomb went off, they didn't care. But I was like, I was kind of scared, you know? So that was a pretty interesting experience. So
Seemed like doomsday to us, but to them didn't seem like doomsday.
for them, it's like normal. Well, they're used to it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I can imagine that. What were some ways that you had to hide from heavy ammunition taking place into effect every split second, like running or jogging away for safety?
Well, I didn't have to do that like every split second because it depends what city you go to. Like west of Ukraine, you still have a chance to get hit by a bomb, but it was like, it's not likely to happen. East and north of Ukraine, it's pretty bad. Like I was in Kharkiv, I think about 20 or 40 bombs would hit a day, and they're about 1,000 pounds, depends. Those days I didn't really hide in bunkers or anything because it was only around like 50 bombs, so I just rode my bike around and whatnot. You would hear bombs going off. Some of them would be close, some of them would be far. And when the bombs would hit, you would feel the vibrations in your chest. Like it doesn't matter, like the bomb could be a few miles away, you would still feel it. It's scary. It sounds like thunder, but except you get that punch in the chest. When I was in Bakhmut, Donbass, there it was pretty bad. About 500 bombs a day compared to 50, and I stayed in the bunker most of the days. There were a few days I went out to go get interviews, but yeah, when I was there, I had to hide in bunkers for sure.
And
So,
and NBC's Richard Engel, I've been watching him too. He had some of the similar experiences as you, for
Yeah.
sure. I remember seeing.
yeah, it's definitely pretty sketchy being out there, but I was just focused on my job, you know.
We were somewhere we weren't supposed to be. There was an abandoned building and we wanted to go inside, and there was a handful of military Ukrainian guys in there. They came up to us and they're like, hey, you guys aren't supposed to be filming and whatnot. So yeah, luckily for us, he didn't shoot us. But
When you were in Ukraine, has any civilians helped you out to evacuate as quickly as possible when you needed it?
I wouldn't say civilians helped me evacuate. They just provided places for me to stay. For example, my friend got a random message from a guy who was his fan. He's like, hey, I got a place for you to stay here in Kharkiv. If you need a place to stay, let me know. And we ended up staying with him for about 2 weeks. His name is Victor.
Yeah. All right. Oh, take care.
I miss you, man. Yeah.
And he was the coolest guy. I followed him around on his adventures. He delivers aid to the elderly completely for free. He doesn't get paid at all. Yes, the civilians in Ukraine definitely helped me out a lot. You know, a lot of them are really nice, except when I went to Bakhmut. When I went to Bakhmut, I would say about 40% of people were pro-Russian. So a lot of them didn't want to be interviewed, and they would put their hands on my camera and stuff, like saying they don't want to be interviewed because they were scared. And yeah, civilians are pretty nice over there.
As I was just saying before, and as you might have seen, that's exactly what it is. One side is pro-Russian, the other side is pro-Ukraine, supporting NATO and the other stuff because they wanted to benefit from that. When you saw the buildings in Ukraine destroyed in front of your eyes, how did you perceive it?
It was definitely a very eerie feeling being there. I did explore some of the blown up buildings, but I was very cautious because Russians, they put booby traps, like it's a wire. And it's just a very sad feeling to see. You know, you see schools where kids used to like study and like play in the playgrounds there, and it's just gone.
So what you see behind me is a K-8 center. Luckily, there was no kids or any teachers or anyone in the building while the Russians blew this up. So no one died.
The Russian military isn't destroying military equipment and military personnel only. They're destroying everything. They don't care if you're a civilian. They just don't care. They'll destroy everything. So it was sad.
I mean, this is why
You know?
we should take advantage of what we have now in this beautiful park that we're filming one-on-one, because as I've told you, we were kids playing here with our old school when the teachers brought us here. That's why I appreciate every time we were here about 13 years ago together.
Yeah. For example, like we're in a park right now, like this floor will be completely black with a giant hole in the floor. That's how it is over there. You know, it's pretty sad.
How did it feel talking Russian or Ukrainian, Cyrillic I should say, in those two languages to the civilians?
Well, I mostly spoke Russian because before the war started, I was learning Russian. I think I started back in like 2015, 2016. And yeah, when I went there, it felt pretty nice to like practice a language that you're learning, but at the same time, half of the Ukrainians did not like when I spoke Russian, and the other half didn't care. So it was, I'm pretty sure it was really weird for them, for an American to be speaking Russian over there, but I did learn a little bit of Ukrainian. They taught me, so yeah.
And to go off topic a little bit, I do remember from our childhood show, regular show, that's what it seemed like a little bit right now as we're talking with the Russian episode with Thomas being the spy. I really kind of perceived it as, oh, like the Russian people watching that, they did not like how America made a mockery about propaganda to them. They banned the episode, the real Thomas over there. Like, for real, they banned it because it had references when they were stealing a park. It's like how right now Putin is trying to steal Ukraine, if you kind of interject that sense.
Yeah, if Putin steals Ukraine, he's going to steal the next country, and then the next one, and the next one, so.
So you see the ideology?
Yeah.
That's great. What was your favorite experience with the locals?
There is definitely a lot. You know, when I was in Kiev, I was riding bike, and a bunch of locals took me around, showing me their city. They took me to a car graveyard, and it was just a bunch of cars that were destroyed by Russian artillery. It was definitely a very eerie feeling being there, but I gotta say my most favorite experience was when I was at the abandoned amusement park and I ran into those two kids, because since they were at a certain age that I knew they would get the jokes that I was saying, it was pretty funny. Like, I was making references to video games like Counter-Strike Source and Call of Duty and Left 4 Dead, and they were getting all my jokes, and I was speaking to them in Russian, and we were just like laughing and having a great time. You know, it was nice to make people smile in such a like dark, eerie time for them. That was my favorite experience.
What terrified you the most in Ukraine while you were there?
The first week was pretty bad because I wasn't used to the bombs. Like, I first heard the alarms, and then you would hear bombs go off, and it was pretty scary. Like, it sounds just like thunder, except you feel like an impact in your chest. You know, it feels like someone's punching you in the chest. It was definitely a really scary experience, but probably one of the most scariest experience was the day I was leaving Bakhmut, which is the frontline city. About 3 bombs went off really close to us, and yeah, they hit the building like pretty much like across the street from us, and it was pretty sketchy. So that was one of the scariest experiences. And then we started driving really fast, and we just left. You know?
Like, it would be from
probably
that fences all the way to here.
Pretty much, probably like that building in the corner there. So yeah, it was pretty close.
Oh, I'm glad you're safe.
Yeah.
With this war ongoing, we can say that this generation of Ukrainian soldiers, men and women and children who are living through this torture, will come out as the strongest ever. And our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims of these attacks, and we thank the brave men for their service in their country, representing and fighting for freedom. This has been Jordan Lee, signing off.